with this. Brilliant. Okay. So as I said, a very, very warm welcome to our new simpler recycling business legislation. We have about an hour or so to go through this, and I'm really delighted to invite our speakers. We have Tina Powley-Mapp from Bentall Centre. We have Andy King, who's the co-founder of LimeTrack. We have David Kingston, yes, nice, lovely bit of irony with this. The team leader of licensing and environmental compliance team at Kingston Council. And we have Alison Goddard, head of regional development from Viola. So first of all, I'm just going to kickstart this by asking each of our guests to just say a few words about themselves. So I'll start with Alison, who's probably still got palpitations for trying to get in. Alison, can you briefly say hello and a little bit about what you do?
Hello, yes, thankfully I have managed to get my voice on here. I'm Alison Goddard. I'm the Head of Regional Development for Veolia. I've been with the company for over 6 years, but within the waste industry for way too many that I want to. We tend to find ourselves fall into it and find our way here. So hopefully be able to sort of impart some of the information that we have sort of for Veolia with for Simply Recycling as we go through.
Lovely, thank you, Alison. Andy, do you want to say a few words briefly, please?
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Andy King here, CEO and co-founder of LimeTrack. And we are a food waste data and technology company. And we've created a smart food waste wheelie bin, which allows food waste to be measured, tracked, and to help compliance with the new simpler recycling regulations that are coming in.
Brilliant. Thank you, Andy. And Tina. Welcome, Tina.
Welcome. Hi, everybody. So I'm Tina. I'm the Centre Director at the Bentall Centre in Kingston. And I've been working in retail and property management for a very long time. And waste and recycling is just one of the many things that we have to dive into in our business.
Thank you, Tina. Yes, if you ever get a chance to chat with Tina, the breadth of activity which goes on in a Bentall Centre is quite astonishing. So it's great that we have your time here, Tina. Thank you. And finally, David.
Good morning, everyone. I'm David Kingstone. I'm team leader for licensing and environmental compliance at Kingston and Sutton Shared Environment Service. And part of my role is to I manage 3 teams. One is the licensing team, the other is the pollution control team, and the third is the environmental enforcement team, who are responsible, among other things, for enforcing the waste regulations and waste legislation. So that's why I'm here this morning.
Thank you, David. Okay, we're going to get cracking with this. And really the first question is really to Andy. I kind of cobbled together a brief bit of summary, but from your side of the tracks, God, my wordplay will improve as the morning progresses, I hope. Would you like to just explain sort of from your side, what is the definition of the new simpler recycling legislation and how will it actually impact businesses, as I say, around sort of above 10 people?
Okay, if I can just answer a question before that, unless it's going to be covered elsewhere, is why this legislation has been drafted and put in and started to be rolled out. So
start with that question then, Andy.
Start with that one. Sorry, I've answered my own question here. So the whole reason for doing this if you've got one container full of general waste with all those different waste streams in, it doesn't allow the separation and recycling of those individual components easily at all or not at all. So by separating food waste, which contaminates everything else and it gets contaminated, by separating that out and then separating those recyclable elements out as well, you're going to get a better recycling rate for the likes of Veolia, where they go into their waste sorting facilities. You're going to get a much higher recycling rate. So it's there to make sure we can hit our targets for recycling. But as a handy byproduct, by taking food waste out of other waste, you should be able to save money as well. So it's a profit and a plan at play by the government that's coming in. So anyway, getting into the regulations, the questions you did ask there, Forbes. Yeah, it's basically going to mean you're going to have a separate food waste caddy in your kitchen area in your business if you've got more than 10 full-time employees. And bearing in mind that threshold applies to how many employees you've got in your business in total, not at each location. So if you've got 2 people at 5 locations, you will still come under the regulations. So separate food waste caddy inside, and you're going to have to arrange through your current or other waste management company, could be Veolia, could be others, to arrange that to be collected on a regular basis. Now, that collection doesn't have to be every week. I think there's a little bit of flexibility, could be up to 2 weeks, but you will have to arrange that. So you might need some space outside for the food waste. Also going to need a similar amount of space and waste container outside for your dry mixed recyclables.
I think we will be going on to that question in terms of the collection and those kind of logistics a little bit later. Can I thank you for that? I just want to go back, because the thing about the Think Greens, and every time I talk to people who are way more learned than I am on this, I always learn something new. And one of the interesting things when we've been talking in the past was about sort of food waste. And as I say, I am probably speaking from a point of ignorance, but what exactly is it which causes so much the problem with food waste? What does it do?
So if particularly with paper and card, if it's contaminated you can't recycle it properly afterwards. And that paper and card waste, if you like, would then have to go to incineration because it can't be recycled and used again in that paper and card stream. And if you've got a lot of food waste on your containers and plastic containers and bottles, it does make it very, very difficult for it to be automatically sorted afterwards, have to be washed and everything else. So by having food waste within your dry mixed recyclables, one, it's probably not dry and you can't recycle it. So it just ruins everything by having food waste in those streams.
Brilliant. Thank you, Andy. That gives us a kind of a good overview of where we're going to be going with this. So thank you for that. Alison, from your side of the tracks again, Jesus, Forbes. How do you inform your customers about segregating their waste? I mean, we're looking at the 4 kind of key sections to this. So how are you sort of educating them? We all use this word education quite a bit, but how are you informing them? And what kind of role do you think you have in this conversation?
So yeah, just to sort of reiterate, so the simpler recycling is food waste, but also glass, to segregate glass, and dry mixed recyclables, paper cans and plastics should all go into separate containers. So what we've done, so we've reached out to each and every one of our customers. We did that late last year to advise them that of the new regulations that were coming out. So anybody with full-time employees of 10 plus must comply to this regulation by the 31st of March. We then followed up with, we've created sort of various webinars and documentation to be able to advise and sort of give people the information required to understand. And you know, we and every one of your waste management licensing companies are your experts to help and guide you. It's our job to help and guide our customers and advise them what is required, how it's required, and how we can help them. Because as you said, that it's our job to be able to educate, guide and advise. And that's how we've taken it sort of from Veolia, to be that expert for them and guide them through. So to make sure our customers are all compliant with the least pain possible. So the journey has been starting for quite a while, knowing this was coming into place. So if your current incumbent hasn't already been in touch, please reach out to them, because they will have the information required and will be able to help you and guide you. And then it's going to be education.
Yes, which we'll come on to a little bit later. I was going to ask you on about the cost implication of this, but just at this quick early point, and I'll open this to all, I guess. There have been two questions in the chat, which I think are kind of quite relevant at this quite early stage. One is, and as I say, was from Katerina, who's asked, compost, if businesses have space, is there compost collection service? And then the second question is, would freezing food waste help with reducing food waste collections? Yes, your face is an interesting question there for you, Alison.
Yeah, it's an interesting question.
Alison and Andy, does anybody want to go first with the question, A, about the compost collection? This is new to me, but also freezing food waste. Who wants to quickly answer?
Shall I go first on the frozen one? Take the second one first.
Yep.
So in terms of helping, I mean, it's not going to change the weight. It may make individual weights deposits less compact, so they're not going to nest together if you put them in a bin, so it may take up more volume for the same amount of weight. It may help you, particularly in some of the summer months, if you've got them there for a long period of time with the smells and everything else. But as soon as the frozen food then melts, it'll be back to normal, and you've probably added a little bit of water to it as well as part of that freezing process. You may use some energy as well, which isn't the greenest thing, to freeze it from room temperature back down to minus whatever you do it, minus 10, minus 15, minus 18 degrees. So I know some companies do that one. Large kind of supermarkets do like to freeze their food waste and take it out. But overall, I don't think it's a beneficial thing for the environment or for the collections.
Thank you, Andy. Yeah.
So regarding the composting, so not many commercial waste collectors actually offer green waste collections because green waste collections tend to be more municipal, so that also household waste collectors do the composting. When the waste is collected, just for different treatments, it may be going off to either an anaerobic digestion plant, or it could be going off to composting. So eventually, yes, it would be composted or energy or created to waste, but very few commercial businesses collect compost as a waste stream, because obviously we need to make sure we are sort of most efficient and provide the collection services that are required, and you need to have sort of enough volume to be able to do that. I'm not saying that in the future with it, it's not going to be something doing.
Okay.
Sorry,
just
to add into that one, if we're looking at from a green and climate perspective, RAP and a number of other different organisations have studied this, and anaerobic digestion gives the best carbon footprint. It's better than straight composting. So because with anaerobic digestion, not only do you get the biomethane being produced, but you've got some lovely digestate or organic fertiliser that comes out as a byproduct. So if there's a choice between composting and AD gives you a better environmental footprint.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you for those two questions. I appreciate that. I just want to go back to Alison very briefly in terms of sort of the role of the waste carriers. Is there, everybody's so aware of added costs and everything else at the moment. I mean, it's very acute. Is there a cost implication here for businesses? And if so, where is this cost going to be based?
So it depends on the size of your business and what you're already having collected and your schedule for waste. But for example, if you are a smaller business with just one general waste bin, yes, there are going to be cost implications, because you do, to comply, have to have a recycling bin for your paper cans and plastics. And in London, we can have glass, but it's not everywhere you can. It depends on the sorting facilities where your material goes. So you may potentially need 4 different bins. From your one general waste bin, you would then need to have a recycling bin, a food bin or caddy, and a glass bin, or like a slim gym. Within London, we tend to have sort of smaller slim gyms. So yes, for smaller businesses, potentially, there is going to be cost implications. But once you are segregating all of these waste streams out, you could probably reduce the size of your general waste bin. So once it is implemented, and then the education starts within your businesses and your teams, you can then be able to reduce your general waste bin. So then there's going to be a bit of a cost saving there to help pay for the other, and general. So recycling, food waste and glass are a cheaper opportunity, like collection price anyway. So theoretically it could. Definitely, for if you've got large collection service, a large business, there's probably is a good cost saving, and it's what you should be doing anyway.
Okay, good, thank you. There's some nice flow of conversation going on in the chat, so keep that going, thank you. I just want to quickly skip over to David and bring David in here, because I think where a lot of us probably think is okay, well, this is all well and good, and how do we actually, what's the governance on this in terms of compliance? So can I quickly come over to you here, David, and ask in this terms of a compliance perspective, how does your relationship work with businesses, and what happens if a business doesn't comply with this new legislation? What statistics do you have?
Thank you, Forbes. I've got a bit of a lag, which is why I've had my camera off, but I'll put it on whilst I speak. Hopefully you can hear me clearly enough. Yeah, so every business or every producer of waste has an inherent duty of care, and that's provided for by the Environmental Protection Act 1990, and specifically Section 34. So every business that produces any form of waste is required to have appropriate waste contract in place to have that waste removed. There's no taking it home and putting any domestic waste bin. That's not allowed. What you have to do is you have to have a waste contract with a commercial waste carrier that who is licensed to carry the waste and dispose of it. And what my team does, the environmental enforcement team, with two parts. We have some officers who are directly employed by the council, and we also have enforcement contractors who are officers. They're known as WISE, Officers Waste Investigation, Support and Enforcement. It's a company that they're contracted, and they're the uniformed officers you may have seen around in Kingston. And between us, what we do is check businesses to ensure that they have those waste contracts in place and they are complying with their duty of care as regards waste. And we have enforcement powers, and what we can do is issue penalty notices to those businesses that aren't complying or refuse to comply. But we do that in a very proportionate way, in a very measured way, and we visit businesses and we speak with them about how they manage waste and how they deal with waste that they produce, and we ask them to demonstrate that they're compliant with the legislation. And we give people an opportunity to demonstrate that to us, because quite often you don't have the relevant documents, to hand in the office when an officer in uniform is standing in front of you. And we appreciate that. So we give, what the officers give people is what we call a duty of care notice, and that asks you to send through to us proof of your contract and your waste arrangements, waste transfer notes, and you have a period of time within which to do that. If you're unable to do that because you don't have a waste contract, for example, then that becomes a penalty notice, and there's a £300 fixed penalty for failing to dispose of waste correctly and failing to have a duty of care, or failing to have a contract and abide with your duty of care. And that's what we do is in regards to this. And simply recycling is a responsibility upon you that helps you meet your duty of care. So officers will be talking to you about the Simply Recycling legislation and asking you what you have in place and what provisions you have in place to manage those. The actual enforcement of the four waste streams falls to the Environment Agency, doesn't fall to local authority. But we will be talking to you about it, and we would expect you to have a duty of care, waste trade contract under your duty of care to deal with those four waste streams when we visit.
Thank you. And how long have you, obviously this kind of starts in March 31st, how long have you been doing the engagement of businesses, and that what's been the response that you've had as you've been going along?
So the wider council has been doing the engagement with businesses through newsletters and events such as this one, and another one back in November. There was some information will be coming out with the business rates letters, so every business will understand their obligations under simple waste recycling. So that's been going on for some time. Our officers are not having those conversations yet. We'll wait until the legislation comes in, when the officers will be out as part of their routine duties and speaking to that. Food and businesses will have been spoken to by food, and if they've had an inspection by a food officer, because they are also making sure that food businesses that we inspect routinely are aware of the obligations. So that's been going on since I think last May. So they have been talking about it and speaking to people about it.
And you referenced sort of that there's an initial fine of £300. Is there incremental steps further up that you have allowance to apply? What are the next steps if there's a serial offender? What processes can you take?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, it is a prosecutable offence. If you fail to comply with your duty of care under the Environmental Protection Act, you can be prosecuted for that. We as a council haven't needed to take that step because, we talk to businesses and we have an enforcement policy that's staged approach to enforcement, and we give people plenty of opportunities to comply. And normally, businesses understand their obligations and they make arrangements for waste to be appropriately dealt with. So we don't have that option. One thing I did want to mention, Forbes, is this new legislation is going to generate more bins. You're going to need at least 3, possibly 4 bins, and many businesses don't have space for more bins. Now, whilst we hope that you'll be reducing the amount of waste that you produce, and you might need smaller bins, but just be mindful, businesses, that you have to find somewhere to keep these bins or waste receptacles. It might be bags, you might be on a bagged collection. You need to find somewhere to keep those that isn't going to cause an obstruction to people. It isn't on the public highway, because one of the other offences that we enforce as an environmental enforcement team is placing of bins on the highway, creating an obstruction, leaving them out beyond when your collection is due. We understand businesses have to put waste bins out the day before the collection or on the morning of their collection, and that's fine, but leaving them out all week is something that's frowned upon, and we do have powers and we do enforce regulations around obstruction of the highway by commercial waste bins. So do just be mindful, businesses, of that. If you are getting extra bins, where are you going to keep them? How are you going to look after them? And don't trip over that particular. And actually,
it's good that you raised that, because actually there's one of the questions in the chat from Felicity, and Andy probably can pick up on this, is presumably can there be a joint contract with multiple businesses and aims on to share bins? David, is that possible? And then I'll come to Andy, because I know Andy's been.
I mean, Andy's the best person to answer this, because that's
okay. I'll go
but yes, no, absolutely. At the end of the day, and what we ask, and it does happen, is that the businesses agree to share a contract and share a bin, and everybody pays their bit for the bin, and that's absolutely fine. All legislation requires is that you have a contract or some way of disposing lawfully the waste that you produce as a business, and how you go about that with your neighbours and your arrangements you have with other businesses is fine by us, as long as you can say to me, we get these waste transfer notes sent to us every month or every week, or however often you have collections, and we can prove to you that we have a contractor that waste is taken by a licensed and reputable contractor.
Can I also just confirm regarding the food waste, that it is even deemed, if you create, because a lot of companies will probably, we don't have any food waste, but a tea bag, if you're having tea and coffee, a tea bag or an orange peel is all deemed as food waste, so you will have to comply. Just wanted to
even if you're just if you're just an office, staff in an office, you still have to comply with these, particularly the food waste and the mixed recyclables. So we're not just talking about food businesses here or commercial.
It's all business.
Catering businesses. It is all businesses have to comply.
Brilliant. Thank you, David. Andy, do you want to follow up there?
Sharing food waste bins. Yeah, just building on from what the question was asked and what David's already said. Even DEFRA, in a recent communication I saw, said you may want to consider sharing a food waste bin with a commercial neighbour as long as you have agreement with them. But doing that, unless you have the proper audit and paper trail to prove you have a contract in place and are using it, it's then open to have you, haven't you, are you using or not. So one of the things we have, the reason we created the smart bin is for allow lots of businesses that are closely located to all share one 240 litre food waste wheelie bin. But because we've got a access control on it with an RFID access card, and we weigh the weight of each food waste deposit that goes into it, we can create those individual waste transfer notes that the likes of David and his team would want to see from your premises to the bin, and then from the bin to via the waste management company to the anaerobic digestion plant. So yeah, with a bit of technology and a communal shared bin, we can allow bin sharing to be cost effective because there's only one collection point for Veolia or other people, but also that you've got that complete audit trail. So you'll have digital waste transfer notes sent to you individually for your 2 or 3 kilograms a week if necessary.
Brilliant. Thank you. Another interesting question in the chat, and again, Tina, I will get you in a second, honestly, because I've got plenty of questions for you. There's a question which is, what about venues that do not have 10 full-time employees, but have, say, school groups visiting that will generate food waste over lunch hour? Would they still need to have this in place? I suspect the answer is yes, purely because the volume of people coming in. It's an interesting question because it's not necessarily 10 people, but the services which they offer. And I guess, Tina, in some respects, I'm not asking you necessarily to answer this question, but to the group of you, where does that kind of fit in? So you don't have 10 full-time, but the services that you offer may generate on occasions the kind of quite a demand. How does that work? I assume it is probably down to the actual, if there is a demand there, you have to account for it. Andy, that's a nice way. I assume you're answering the question.
I'm happy to start off with. So I think there's compliance with the regulations is the first question. If you've got less than 10 full-time employees in your business, you don't have to comply by the 31st of March this year. You will do by the 31st of March 2027. So compliance-wise, you probably don't have to do it. But from an environmental perspective, and more importantly, perhaps at this economic time we're in, from a financial perspective, if you're generating a reasonable amount of food waste, you'd be stupid not to separate it and get it collected as food waste because it's half the price of general waste. So from a financial perspective, you should do it. From an environmental perspective, you should do it. From a compliance with the laws up until 2027, no, you don't have to.
Thank you. That's a very direct answer. And Alison, you were nodding your head quite a bit to that.
Well, it's the cost. It just it's the right thing to do. Why we're doing it is it's the right thing to do. But the more you can segregate your waste over time, you will be saving money on your waste costs. And as well as all of the carbon and everything else associated, it's not just cost, there's also the carbon associated. So the segregation is absolutely sort of vital.
Brilliant. Thank you, Alison. Okay, Tina, I'm bringing you in here.
Yes. Finally, I think just to add on those points, for businesses, certainly within the Bentall Centre, we support our smaller businesses where they would have larger groups coming in, but not necessarily a large amount of employees. So being able to support our occupiers in their separation of waste helps them maintain their wants and desires, because businesses would always want to make sure that they have a sustainable approach. And then what we do is support that, similar to Alison, is, you know, we're supporting the facilities of being able to meet that. And then the frameworks that come in around it, so the legislation, this then just adds another layer for supporting businesses in understanding and working within those frameworks to help them make informed choices on how they separate their waste or manage their waste products.
When we were chatting the other day, it was really interesting to understand, and this is where the word education comes in, is that you're a great advocate for this, but very much there's a process for whenever a business comes into the Bentall Centre, there's a kind of, these are the do's and the don'ts, and this is how we can help you. Would you mind just sharing a little bit more on that? Because it was really interesting in terms of the way that you kind of really kind of encourage and navigate people through.
Yeah, it starts from the very beginning. So when an occupier wants to come in, and it's a discussion around the lease contract and how we approach the services and products and services that we provide under service charge for occupiers that come into the centre. And it starts from conception of fit outs, how businesses are managing their materials. Are they sustainable materials? And sometimes there's a few myths around that, around whether sustainable materials are more costly, which often they're not. When you balance it out, they're not, they cost exactly the same as a new material. So it's how we work with our shop fitters and the management of their materials and waste, and supporting their circular economies. And then it moves along, and we support the employees that are coming in to work in the retail units that we have, and how we can support them. So we have our occupier handbooks, which gives lots of information to our businesses about the products and services that are supporting them and helping them to manage their space, and waste is part of that, and how we can support their segregation.
How, in terms of, obviously we're building up to this on the 31st of March, what's your general view of the businesses within the centre? How are they adapting, and what challenges have you seen for them?
I think businesses, essentially, especially retail, we have already been on that transitional journey of being sustainable and making sustainable and ethical choices within our workplace and work streams. So a lot of our businesses already separate and already recycle in their own circular economies. So some of their packaging will be reused, and their cardboard will be reused, or pallets will be reused. And they use their logistics to help them to manage that. So as soon as they have space, they're not sending empty lorries, they are filling it with those recyclable products to help them reuse that in their distribution and operational work streams. So it's embedded quite well. And there's also products and services that the customers can make use of inside our retailers as well, with clothes swaps and bringing in items to recycle in order to balance out a product, and to bring that circular economy around, not just for the business use, but involving our community and our customers as well.
Could you just explain? That's quite interesting. We hadn't mentioned that before, but could you just expand on that? So what have you put in place for them to do in terms of the circular economy, that people can bring things in?
So there's some businesses, so such as H&M, for instance, you can take clothing into the store they will weigh it and apply a discount. So they're helping you to recycle products that may not be usable, or they'll use it and take it to recycle and reuse and redistribute out. So there's lots of businesses that do similar things. The same with coffee recycling and coffee cups. You'll see in most of the food and beverage places, well, they'll have separate liquids for customers to join in and support their efforts in recycling.
Have you, I'm slightly ad-libbing here, I appreciate. Have you been actually quite pleasantly surprised at how people have been quite progressive?
Yes, it's been very progressive in the efforts that our brands are making, and it helps support our smaller businesses. So SMEs also then can take leadership from and guidance from the larger brands within the centre and look at how they're operating, utilising the services that we provide as well to support them along that journey. So we put in, as well as the legislation, the centre is putting in frameworks and operational processes that support our businesses along that sustainable route.
Okay, that's really encouraging, and there's a lot which goes on there. So thank you for sharing that. We'll come back to you a little bit later on some of the challenges, but thank you, Tina. Andy, this simpler simpler recycling, it's not necessarily new. Scotland and Wales have been pushing this forward a wee bit longer, haven't they? Can you share any kind of sort of feedback on how they've progressed this?
Yeah, I mean, Scotland was the leader in separating food waste. They started doing it about 10 years ago with some legislation. I think if you were a hospitality producer producing more than 50 kilograms a week, you've had to do it. Now they've slowly taken that down to anyone who produces more than 5 kilograms a week has to do it. So they've been doing it for 10 years, and the amount of food waste that's generated, the amount of collections has grown exponentially during that time, which is not a bad thing. Wales, they're approximately 12 months ahead of us. So they introduced their form of simpler recycling March last year. So they've already seen some good recycling rate increases over the last 12 months.
Brilliant. Thank you. I just want to dip into some of the chat again, because there's one specific question which I can see people responding, but maybe Tina and all of you could maybe chip in. Is Shiv has mentioned there's understanding the 4 waste streams of bins, the paper, the food, general waste. He's mentioned the term biohazard waste, sanitary pads and nappies. And his question is, should they go into general waste, which goes into incineration? Is this a good option or only? And just actually to possibly Tina, Alison, you, Andy, is that little stream of area, how does that actually work?
So that needs to be,
again, you're so familiar with this one.
yeah. So that would come under clinical waste. So it's there was a new classification a couple of years ago that allowed it to be offensive waste, but it does need to be a completely separate waste stream, and they have different coloured bags that they all go into. It should not and cannot go into general waste. It needs to be collected by a registered clinical or hazardous team to be able to take that on. I saw in the chat also there was something about dog waste, but I think maybe that was more about bins in parks. Dog waste, once again, is a completely sort of different, separate waste stream.
Which I should imagine is going to have a significant effect domestically as much as anything else, to actually have that segmented out. That will.
So simpler recycling will be coming to municipal homes from March 26. So we're, as businesses, we're leading the way, ready for, and then all municipal contracts throughout the nation will have to comply with it from March next year.
Brilliant.
So if you don't have 4 bins already at home, you will have next year.
Yes, which kind of basically moves on to the next thing, which is sort of the behaviour changes you in terms of where we at with this and experiences. Is the attitude is that businesses can actually benefit from this, or is this just, oh, it's just a tick box? How do we go from a tick box to there's a benefit? How can we do this?
I mean, it is absolutely behaviour change, and it's some businesses are already doing. A lot of businesses are already doing it. As Tina was saying at Bentall, they've got it already separated, and they've got some really good sort of opportunities already. It is absolutely behaviour change. And how do you do it? It is going to be strong engagement. So once you understand what your waste is then going to be strong engagement with your on-site teams, your cleaning teams. It will be clear messaging, clear signage, so everybody knows what they're doing. Hopefully, most businesses now have got rid of under-desk bins. And so it's just it's not silly things, little things like that will make a difference. So nobody should have an under-desk bin. Everybody go and have a bin area where you have to get up and then think about where you place that piece of waste. So it is absolutely a behaviour change. And so not only do you need to be looking at your external bins, probably looking at what your setup is internally to make sure you can change that behaviour.
And I assume if you are in a rental space, if you've got your own space, you need to go to the provider and say, we need these things laid out.
Absolutely, yeah. It'll be their responsibility to sort of help and assist. Within your space, you'll need to be able to segregate it out, but then your rental space will have the correct system externally to be able to do it. So yeah, behaviour change, absolutely. And you'll need to look internally as to start start segregating at source will make things so much easier for when you then have to go and put it outside for collection.
And so when you mean segregating it at source, what kind of scenario do you mean by that? Sorry.
So if you're in an office and you've got a canteen area or a coffee area, have a food caddy there. So with a sign clearly saying food waste or pictorials on it, so people know their tea bag goes in there, their orange pill goes in there. And as I suggested, there shouldn't be any under-desk bins. Have a bin area with separate bins, clearly signed. So when you carry your waste, you put it in whichever bin it needs to be in. If you've got if you've got a bin under your desk, you can just throw everything in, and it won't get segregated. And it's good. It's good to get your
feeling really bad now because I've got a bin underneath my desk.
You need to get rid of that.
We do have a collection point outside our door for the various things, but I do. So I am one of those people.
Your walking exercise, you can add it to your steps.
Yeah,
exactly.
David, you've been very patient. You've got your hand up.
That's okay. Yeah, I mean, I completely advocate what Alison was saying about getting rid of the multi-use bins under your desk and yeah, get your step counting. I just want to go back to clinical waste just because I think just to make sure there's no confusion there. In a domestic setting, absolutely, nappies can go in to a general waste bin. That is permitted. But where you are collecting them, if you have a baby change, baby change room in your toilets, or you have a point where bins are being used to collect lots of nappies from different people, then you are required to have a clinical waste collection for those. And that is as Alison was quite rightly saying, a separate service, and it is something again hesitate to say it, but it is something the council enforce. But my team do that. It's actually my pollution control team do that, strangely. But they do. Yeah, we do pick up on that.
Brilliant. Thank you for following up on that point. It's good to clarify that. But from your perspective, in terms of, we're kind of nearing to the coming to the end of this a little bit. What, from your perspective, what practical changes should businesses really start making now? What do they need to start looking out to do from your side of the compliance? I'll come to David, particularly on the compliance, and then there's a few other things which we'll move on to. David.
So I'm going to say, speak to Alison or other providers that you happen to use. If you haven't already, talk to your trade waste contractor. Have the conversation with them about how they can support you. If they're unable to support you with all the waste streams that you're required to collect, and let's just say what hasn't been mentioned today, but plastics includes soft plastics, so your plastic bags, your packets, crisp packets, those are now all included within plastic. So waste collectors will be required to collect those as well. Great news is from 2026, your domestic waste collection service should also have those. So you don't have to separate them out and take them to your local supermarket, which I'm sure everybody does. But no. So what you need to do now is start having those conversations with your trade waste contractors, finding out what the solutions are for you. Talk to people like Alison and the others on the call today about what they can offer you and how they can support you. Other waste providers are available. I have to say that. But at the end of the day, that's what you need to be doing now. Do you think about how you're going to manage it and segregate it in your office, in your space, in your workplace? Do you think about how you're going to be able to deal with where the bins are going to be kept, where you're going to store them, and ultimately, if you have any questions or concerns, then get in touch with the council, and we will be able to give you some help and advice on the best way to go about these things.
It does strike me, and there's not a clear answer to this, is where the bins are kept, and I suspect that could be one of the biggest challenges. And I think, as I say, I don't think every person's situation is going to be different, but I can see that is possibly going to be one of the bigger challenges.
I think for two reasons. First, yes, where you're going to keep them in the space and the availability. Now, hopefully, you'll be producing far less waste that goes into black bags, as we call them, and you therefore don't need a big bin for that anymore. And you can take the space of your big bin away, where we're keeping your big bin and put in some 3 smaller bins or something. But the other point's gone out of my head. What was it? I had 2 points. No, it's gone. It'll come back to me.
We can come back.
Apologies.
Mull it over. I'm just going to go.
Oh, yeah, that's it. I know. Multiple collections. There is, of course, also now you'll have more collections. Potentially, you may only have 1 or 2 collections. You might now need 3 or 4 collections. Think about the timing of them and when they happen, because we get a lot of noise complaints from waste collections. We don't want to be having more complaints because you're having more collections. Just be mindful of that.
Brilliant. Thank you, David. Alison, in terms of those collections, and then I'm going to come on to Tina in terms of what lessons we can learn from your experiences there. Alison, that particular point about collections, we've talked about this. Does this mean that there's going to be more collections going on? How's this going to really work?
So, yes, individual companies will be having more collections, but we as a business and other waste collection providers, they already have separate vehicles out collecting these different waste streams. So we're not adding extra vehicles onto the street. So we're not creating more carbon that way, because your collections will just become part of our schedule. So yes, you're going to have multiple collections, but you're not creating, or this whole system isn't creating more vehicles on the street, because we already have a dedicated food trucks out. We already have dedicated recycling trucks out, dedicated glass. So they will just be, we'll optimize all of our collection schedule to make sure that they are all collected on the correct bins as and when. And once again, so your provider will give you the schedule of when they are and knowing when they can. We all understand the timing restrictions and requirements for councils and work within those already. So it's just an understanding. It's sort of get your internal systems correct, and then we your other service providers can help you along the way with it, all the schedules.
At the very beginning, Andy mentioned about possibly 2 weeks for food collections. Will food collections, because it is food and everything which can go with it, does that mean that that may be more frequent?
We do run food trucks within Kingston multiple times a week, but obviously depending on what your requirements are, we will fit your business and your collection onto one of our scheduled ones, and we'll advise you when they are to be able to make sure they're incorporated. We're also doing, because one of the problems is the bins. We are offering caddy collections as well, as so you don't necessarily have to have a big 240 or a 120 bin, so you can have smaller. We understand especially within London, limited space, limited requirements. For glass, we have a smaller bin called a Slim Jim for glass, and then for food we have caddies, because back last year, maybe if they used to have bags of food, we can't have that because of rodents, foxes, so it has to be in something. But there are different size containers to hopefully suit different companies. So it's just, please speak to your waste carrier.
And again, that goes back to the education, just trying to get a little bit informed. So that's very valuable to know. Thank you for sharing that, Alison. So Tina, coming near to the end of this, from your travels and journeys around the Bentall centres to a lot of probably, I mean, this is for 10 plus, but there's a lot of smaller businesses and people who just want to be informed. What kind of key lessons do you think you've learned from your working there that you would like to share with our visitors here today? What would you suggest?
I think it's about also helping your customers on that journey as well. When I think of some of the smaller independents or coffee shops, small restaurants that are looking to make more sustainable choices and want to come on that journey, whether they've got less than 10 employees or not, it's about helping your customers understand that journey too, because some of the challenges can be around the disposal of waste, or how you're sitting having your sandwich and you're popping stuff and mixing your materials up, which then your small business has to then work to separate. So sometimes it can be around that. So we do a lot of work around supporting our occupiers with regards to their educational pieces. So you'll see those bins. Fast food restaurants have separate liquids disposal and food waste disposal, and it's just helping them to take their customers on that journey too, so we can all share and contribute to the efforts. And it lightens the load for that small business as well when we make ethical choices and conscious choices as an individual. That helps our community as a whole, and it also helps that small business in supporting them, leaning into something that may be quite new for them, and they've got these new bins to separate everything out into, and they're trying to fit that into their daily operations, make sure that they're serving everybody in the way that they want to, and layering in this separation stream on top of what they're doing already. So supporting small businesses by making ethical choices ourselves will help do our little bit too.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think what's really encouraging here is a kind of a snapshot, if you sort of listen to the chat, is how a lot of people are really kind of informed, and maybe they may need to go up to their provider or their person who's rental space and say, you should be doing this. So it needs to be more proactive from all of us to go up to the provider and say, hang on, this needs to be done, because that may not be happening. I am going to go back one step here because there seems to be an interesting thread here, which is actually defining the clarity of how clean is clean in terms of the food containers. And it's actually really kind of quite interesting because I think it throws out quite a few challenges for organisations. There's various things in the chat you I guess may have seen. Do we need to start washing out food containers before they're placed in collection bins? Do we need to clean the plastic trays? I appreciate it's quite difficult to say how clean is clean. Any guidance here? Andy or Alison? Andy's about to say something.
I think a lot of it comes down to when you've got your materials recycling area and how easy it is to automatically separate it rather than manual. Contamination is going to reduce the impact of identification and recycling it. I'm a little bit anally retentive and residential stuff at home. I do rinse and clean everything out before I put it in the recycling. But I know I'm not like everyone. So the cleaner you can do it, the better. If there's food waste in it, you've got to scrape out the big parts of food waste first, put them into your food waste recycling bin. I personally would rinse it, but I know for some people that is probably a bridge too far.
I was going to agree. Ideally, yes, but practically it probably isn't going to happen. But any food waste, once again, it goes back to having the correct internal bins available. So within the kitchen area where your bins are, next to your recycling bin, there should be a caddy for you to be able to scrape any excess food out.
Sorry, can I just add on to that one that a lot of it would also come back down to your frequency of collection of your dry mixed recyclables or your plastics. If they're washed and clean, they're not going to start smelling soon, particularly over the summer months. So you can increase your frequency of collection and save cost. If they're half full of food when you put them in there, it's not going to be a great for vermin or for smells either. So it goes hand in hand with your frequency of collections as well to consider how clean your dry mixed recyclable should be.
Thank you. I'm just going to slightly go off the slides. I noticed there was a comment from Raheem, who's from the White House nursing home. And I know that, Raheem, can I actually get you to come online to ask your question here? Because I think it kind of summarizes quite a lot of the challenges which this is trying to look at. Raheem, are you there?
Hi, guys. Yeah, sorry for the kind of late ramble and to throw that one in.
No, it's really important because I think you are a perfect example in terms of how this applies or is a challenge.
Yeah, I mean, just as a small local business, and like I put in the comment, it's become an audit trail because, and I guess we're all different in terms of our product, but as a care home, I mean, I've listed there, we've got clinical waste, medication waste, sharps waste, offensive waste, general waste, recycling. We are doing the food at the moment through Lime Track and Andy, which is working really well. And I guess the question was, what next? Because at this moment in time, there's a huge amount of auditing and a huge amount of deliveries coming into the nursing home. And it was more of a rant, really, to be honest. So, but it was really to say, what's next? I mean, you know, where does recycling stop? Because there is a cost of recycling, and as a small business, we're having to pay for all these different types of collections. And at some point, you know, you look at your cost analysis, and yes, I understand, you know, doing good for the environment and trying to, you know, be trying to decarb, you know, being a carbon-free business, but at some point it doesn't work because the cost element won't work. It'll just cost us too much to be green. Sorry.
I think
no, I think it's a really good. I'm glad you've come on to ask that question because I think there's a reality to all of this, and I think you've articulated it really very well there, Raheem. So thank you, Alison.
Yeah, I think obviously we are all governed as to what we have to do and what we need to do. And so it's then just making sure, working with your providers, that it's the right way. We do have an online hub. This gives you all the information, so for data, but as most of your providers will do for auditing. But all we can do as waste providers is help you with a solution that best suits you and works for you with minimal cost. And ultimately, it's the behaviour change is to create less waste. Some of your waste streams, there's absolutely nothing you can do about. And those clinical waste streams, there's nothing you can do within your environment. But when it comes to food, are we doing portion control? Are we minimising the food waste? So I think the whole part of it is to really make people take stock and think about what they're creating. Can your providers and some of your suppliers take the waste back? Are there those conversations happening? So they're taking their waste back with them. But yeah, I completely sympathise with what you're saying. We are all part of the solution, and we all creative it is to try and get that waste minimisation.
Tina, thank you, Alison. Tina.
Yes, I think there's also power in numbers. So earlier on in the chat, there was talk from David and Alison about that grouping of businesses collaborating to support each other, and that's really useful. So sometimes you would have business improvement districts that will support you with that collaboration, which reduces your outgoings and the cost of recycling, but supports you in being able to meet the frameworks that are put in place that that enable you to make those ethical choices. And great tip as well as on portion control with regards to making sure your food waste is limited. I try that with my kids, but they always want more.
I think where Raheem's, I mean, I'm fortunate to know where Raheem's business is. It's very self-contained space. So the idea of being able to join up with anybody else is not practical. It's a very self-contained unit as such. And I think there's a certain degree of empathy of thinking how, in terms of the micro levels of separation, is this journey going to go? And I think that is, and I'm not sure that anybody probably really knows, but it's a case of that filter, that goes there. And I think I guess we can just deal with where we are at the moment. But I think that those separating is going to become really onerous. I think it's, even listening to the chat here, is just actually trying to define again what is clean enough in terms of pizza boxes, oil on it. Do they have crusts? Do we turn this out? Should the oil be removed? I think there's a lot of repeat learnings which we're going to have to do. But thank you.
Sometimes your neighbour isn't just your neighbour right next door to you. Sometimes your neighbour is your similar business in a reasonable proximity.
Within a bid area or kind of a high street, those things in terms of joining up, I think those conversations had to have.
And within your community, so your business industry community, what other small businesses will be having the same challenges. So how can you reach out and have those conversations within your business sector to say, how are you approaching this, and what can you do, or how can we collaborate to support each other?
I just want to come on to Andy now because I'm conscious of the time. So Andy, you've got a hand up, and then I just want you to ask more about the smart food pilots.
Okay, so just to build on what was previously said, I think the biggest, or the first step that everyone who hasn't already looked at their simpler recycling can do now is do a 1 week audit of the waste you generate in terms of food waste, everything else. Then that gives you good information to have a chat to your current waste management provider, and also have a chat with your neighbours. And once you understand what amount of food waste they're generating on a weekly basis, you can then work together and get a schedule that's going to work for both of you and get the collection frequency right.
Can I just be pedantic and just say, when you said do 1 week's audit, what does that look like? Because it sounds quite easy to do, but what does an audit actually look like? What would you expect from it?
It's basically you separate your waste into the streams that's already been talked about, the 3 or 4 different ones, and you weigh it, you assess the volume to get an idea of the quantity of waste containers you might need and what frequency you may need them. So it's just getting a handle on the size of waste you're generating in each of those streams.
Okay, thank you. Do you want to just quickly share a few moments on the smart food waste pilots?
So yeah, we've run some pilots about almost a year ago now in Surbiton, where we had a number of businesses sharing bins together. We've also more recently got some smart bins out there, and Raheem at the White House has one of those, where it's not all about sharing a bin. If you're a hospitality business, you can get a massive cost saving and emission saving by reducing your food waste. We talked about portion control. With our smart bin, you're going to get some very trustworthy, simple data being captured on that food waste, whether it's spoilage, preparation, plate waste, unserved food. Once you start measuring stuff, that's when you can start improving it. And at about £4 per kilogram is the cost of food waste to buy it, serve it, and dispose of it. Even a small percentage decrease in your food waste, if you're a hospitality business, will save you hundreds, if not thousands of pounds. So from an economic perspective, any hospitality business needs to be monitoring, managing, and reducing their food waste. Our smart bin is a very simple and easy tool to capture that data, and you've got it on your smartphone or a web app that allows you to take those decisions very quickly to see how you can improve it.
Brilliant. I'm conscious of time. Joanna's put something in the chat, but what should businesses do to join the scheme, and are there any deadlines?
So this scheme comes live at the end of March. So to join for the Lime Track scheme or the simple recycling is legislation at the end of March. So you need to be compliant by then. And so just contact your waste service provider.
But if anyone wants to join the Smart Food Waste Scheme and get a handle on their food waste, if nothing else, please just get in contact with me if we can do it before the end of this year. So basically March now, really. Get in contact with me, we can get you a bin, and we can take it from there.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Thank you so much for your chats, your questions. I appreciate we've only kind of literally just skirted around quite a few of them. I hope we've answered most of them which you've been given, but I think there's a lot of urgency and enthusiasm to start making these changes. So thank you for attending this morning. I'd love to say a big thank you to Andy, to Alison, to Tina, and to David. Thank you so much for your time and getting through the technology, bless it.
Yes.
And a big thank you to Joanna and the team there at Kingston Council, to Ian Manders, who's leading on the portfolio of Kingston Green Business Community, and just the journey. I'm in a fortunate position. I can see what other councils and other boroughs are doing in my chamber capacity, and we are really fortunate with Kingston makeup at the moment. They are really doing a lot of really good work. There's always much more we could do, but the heart and the determination is certainly there. But thank you all, and we, as I said, this has been recorded, so I'm sure Joanna will be circulating the link. So if you struggle to get off to sleep one night, you can watch this again. But thank you very much, everybody. Lovely to see you all, and mind yourselves. Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.